So Sam, it's pretty crazy that our very first episode, we're going to be covering something that's literally been talked about a bazillion times. But are you familiar with the NAR settlement that happened
So
last month?
so it's funny because like I'm in lending. I deal with realtors all day. I've been doing
Yeah.
it for years, and I had never even heard of NAR until realtors started calling me bugging out recently, talking about there's a NAR lawsuit, there's a NAR lawsuit, and I have to be honest, I had no idea who NAR was, and I still kind of don't. And I don't really understand who's suing who and for what reason. And I kind of don't even care. Like, it doesn't even matter because what I care about is how it's going to
Yeah.
affect our viewers, you, the buyers. I think that's what people are watching us for. That's what they want to hear about is how it's going to affect them.
Dude, I first want to find out, how have you not heard of NAR?
I mean, why would I? Like, who the hell is
I
NAR?
mean, dude,
Like
it's the
NAR.
National Association of
I
Realtors.
know,
We're
but
all
every
a
like
part of it.
so for example, I'm in Vegas, right? So in Vegas, there's
Okay.
the GLVR, and I'm sure in Texas there's like another local like monitoring agency that handles the realtors from Vegas. So the national, like, it's just more bloated, uh, layer on top of layer on top of layer.
The National Association of Realtors is kind of like a governing body for us. Like they represent us in court, obviously. Like NAR is kind of like an important component.
And so the rumors out there are that sellers aren't going to be paying commissions to your buyer's agent anymore. So what people are thinking is they're going to get to sell their house without having to pay a commission. And where does that leave buyers? Like, so what does the
Yeah,
buyer
so
do now?
like all right, I'm gonna simplify everything really, really easy. So because I don't think people really care about the ins and outs of like the settlement and everything.
They don't,
So
and I even don't.
it they could give a shit, to be honest with you.
Right.
Really, the only thing is, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the buyers. It's sellers and sellers agents, listing agents, me. Okay, we now can't put cooperative compensation on the MLS. What does that mean for a buyer? Okay. Typically, when you get a real estate agent in the past, you kind of didn't really have to pay for your buyer's agent, because what happens is sellers always advertise the commission that they're willing to give to a buyer's agent if they bring someone to the table with an offer and they execute it. Okay, so nowadays, or in a couple of months, this thing is supposed to take place in July. But essentially what it is now is you're kind of responsible for your buyer's agent's commission.
Okay, so let's
Now
just recap. Like, up until now, like, I'm a buyer, right? I want to buy a house.
you're a
I
buyer.
I
Yep.
call like the realtor who's my
You call me.
neighbor, or,
You
or
call
I call
me.
Mark.
Let's
I'll
call let's
call
call
Mark.
Mark from
We're
Be
gonna call
Really
Mark. I want to
Texas.
buy a house. I'm gonna call Mark, right? I don't have to worry
Yeah.
about paying Mark. I just say, hey, Mark, I'm already pre-approved with Sam. I want to go
Yep.
buy a house. Mark says, okay, cool.
Yep.
Let's show you some houses from the MLS, and then I go out with Mark, look at some houses. We buy a house, and all I'm paying for is the house. I'm not paying for Mark, right? Up until
Yeah.
this
So
point.
what happens is every house that we're going to look at, the seller and the seller's agent, the listing agent, okay, they put on the MLS what they're willing to pay for a commission. Now, in my area, it's customary that it's anywhere from like 2 to 3%. I've seen as low as 1%. I've seen as high as 6%. Right.
Okay.
So, but now you're going to be responsible as the buyer for your agent's commission. Now, it doesn't mean that your agent can't negotiate with a with the seller's agent and try to get some of their commission. But that's all it is, man. Like, everyone is kind of like up in arms, like this is going to change the industry. Sam, it's really funny. I actually had a lady last week call me and say, Mark, did you hear about what happened with NAR? Because it's all over like all the news, channels. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty well aware of it. I've read the whole thing. She's like, does this mean that agents are no longer gonna be around? And I said, what are you talking about?
Well,
She's
agents are
she's
calling
like,
me freaking out, like thinking that
yeah,
I
yeah,
have all the
yeah.
answers,
So
and some of them
so
are saying that.
yeah, that's what she was saying. She was like, does this mean that there's not going to be any more buyer's agents? And I go, what are you talking about? I'm like, nothing's changed. Commissions have always been negotiable. They've always been. You know what I mean? So there's never been like a set like 1, 2, or 3%. It's always been negotiable. But the listing agent will, when they have their CMA presentation with the seller, they always go, hey, listen, have you considered maybe offering a commission for anyone for an agent that brings someone to the table with a contract and we end up executing on it? And that's a whole other conversation, but you talk about it, but now we're not able to advertise that. And that's really all it is, man.
Okay, so let me
Nothing's
just simplify this, because I know a little bit about this. Up until now, right, the seller was putting up on the MLS what the commission is going to be for, himself, the seller, and what it's going to be for Mark, who's representing me. And generally, like, the average is 3% on each side, okay? And like you said, it's always been negotiable, but sometimes the seller says, I'm only going to pay the buyer's agent 1%. And I think that the agencies didn't like that, because realtors would steer their clients away from those 1% listings because they didn't want to make 1%. So they'd only be showing them houses that had a 3% commission, and it wasn't representing the buyer properly, because maybe the buyer wants that house that only has a 1% commission offered to the buyer's agent. So is that the purpose of removing the posting of the commission on the MLS?
So that's one of them, but here's the thing, right? So when you have a buyer's representation agreement, in that agreement, which is a legally binding contract for the terms of your relationship with that buyer, you state in there what your commission is, and that's not going away. It's always been there. So even if the seller was offering, 1.5%, you would say, hey, I'm representing you for 3%. That didn't change.
Right. But you don't see that too
now,
often.
like,
you don't see that often.
Well, the thing is like, now as a listing agent, I can't advertise that, that cooperative compensation is what everyone's calling it, but it's the buyer's agent's commission is what it is. I don't want to confuse. Hold on, I don't want to confuse it any more than what it is.
Exactly.
Nothing is going to change that much.
Right.
And the reality is buying a house is hard. There's a lot of DIYers out there that are going to go about it themselves and go, yeah, like, now I don't have to pay any commissions. And I totally get it. These are the same guys that are going to represent themselves in court. These are the same guys that change their own oil. And I applaud them. If you're willing to go about representing yourself, like, throughout a real estate transaction, like, kudos to you. But for the majority of us, we do need a real estate agent.
All right.
You need a good agent. And so that's not going to change.
Okay, so let me just back up for a minute. So now, okay, the word is out. Like you said, people are talking NAR, right? We're trying to talk to buyers and sellers, real people. We're not trying to talk to agents and stuff like that, okay? Some sellers are going to hear the word that they don't have to pay a commission anymore, all right? It's going to happen. The odd guy is going to be like, nope, I don't want to pay a commission anymore. So I'm a buyer, right? You're my real estate agent. All right. We go to this house. I want it. The seller doesn't want to pay a commission. So what's going to happen to me, the buyer?
You're responsible for your agent's commission.
I now have to pay your commission, right? So
that's right.
In this particular case, on the odd deal, I don't think it's going to be like on every deal blanket wide. I still think sellers are going to be incentivized to offer a commission. But on the odd deal where the seller doesn't want to offer a commission, I, the buyer, might have to come up with an extra 5 or whatever, 8,000 or whatever the agreed upon price is to pay my agent for the work he's done. And we understand that you, Mark, representing me, is going to work hard for me. You've probably been calling me for the last 2 years. You've shown me like 25 different homes. You made sure the house wasn't leaky, didn't burn down 3 years ago. You gave me all the proper disclosures. You gave me all the proper contracts. If I have a problem with my transaction down the road, you're going to be there to help me. So there's definitely value in that commission. But where on that particular deal where the seller would have traditionally paid that commission, now I'm going to have to pay it, the buyer, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
All right. And then the next question I get from agents that
smooth.
call me is, so can I finance that commission? And this is where I come in because I'm a lender. And before I tell you about this, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. Now let me get into what happens on the lending side. The people are asking me, so can I finance that commission? And the answer is no, you can't. Okay. If you need 3%, first-time buyers need 3% down to buy a home. You're still going to need 3%. And then you're going to need your closing costs, which you've always needed. And part of your closing costs now are going to be that commission if the seller is not offering a commission to your agent. Okay. So on the odd deal, you might have to pay your 3%, the closing cost, and the buyer's commission. There's one
So
loan
Sam, what happens with VA buyers?
right.
Though?
I was just getting to that. There's one loan. So they're allowing that. They're allowing us to add that to your closing statement on conventional and FHA loans and non-conforming loans. But the VA is not going for it at this point, right? Right now, the VA is saying basically, if you're a VA buyer and you want to get into one of those transactions,
Yeah.
you kind of can't unless the seller is going to pay a commission. You can't do it because they're not allowing that line item. They don't want VA customers at this point. Maybe this will change when because this is all kind of like in the air right now.
And that sucks, man.
Nothing's really
these
settled.
these are vets, you know.
They're vets. So right now, like there's some inventory out there that they might not even be able to transact on. I mean, there might be ways around it. Like I said, this is all brand new. Maybe it's a seller credit or something like that, right? But
yeah,
unless the seller's offering a credit or a compensation, the buyer's not allowed to pay compensation on VA deals.
I mean, there's going to be situation, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I personally think that it's just going to be simply the agent is going to say, "Hey, Mr. VA buyer, I can only show you homes that the seller is offering some sort of commission," and then you got to pick and choose from there.
And that's going to be interesting too, is like, what are they going to allow? Like, because they're trying to control it right now. This is government sticking their hand in free enterprise, right?
Yeah.
Trying to say, and they're trying to make it fair, but it's like, it's clunky right now. It's clunky. So are you allowed to say to Mr. Buyer, I can't show you this home? I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be allowed to do that. I don't know if you're even going to be able to call the other agent and say, what's the commission? I don't know if you're going to be allowed to do that. We just don't know yet.
You can negotiate the commission. Okay. But the thing is like I said, okay, when you meet with your agent for the first time and you guys sign a buyer's agent commission, the commission that he's requiring to represent you is stated on that document. So moving forward, right, he knows that if he doesn't have any money, then I guess the agent can only show them houses that the seller is willing to offer some sort of compensation.
So the light just turned on for me and probably for our viewers as well. So what you're saying is when you meet, because right now, sometimes like I want to buy a house and I'll go to Mark, sell me or show me a house that I want to buy. Some agents aren't even doing a buyer's agreement. They're just starting to show you homes, right?
And you should never do that.
Right.
You should always have a buyer's agreement.
You're going to have to now do a buyer's agreement, and the commission's going to get worked out right then and there. And if the seller's paying a commission, great. You know, let's say you say, okay, Miss Sam, you want to buy a house with me, the commission's 3%, and the seller's offering 2%, then I'm on the hook for 1%. Is that kind of how it's going to work?
Yeah. So that's what they're saying. Okay. But the agent can never make more. Okay, so let's say, for instance, on that buyer's rep agreement, like it says, like I can represent you for 2%. Well, if the sellers are offering 1%, then they're only on the hook for the buyers are only on the hook for 1%. You can never the agent can't make more than the agreed upon commission on the buyer's rep agreement.
Okay, so
does that make sense?
So that's kind of attacked to protect the buyer. Like the price isn't going to change from what you were initially disclosed, and that's similar to lending too. When you get a disclosure and there's the loan officer's fee on there, the loan officer fee cannot change. I mean, that's it. That's the fee.
That's it.
So that's kind of like a way of trying to protect the buyer.
I think we're beating a dead horse.
Yeah, just to recap, like you said before, this is not in effect just yet, okay? But for the buyer out there, because that's who we're talking to, what did you learn from this video? You learned that you need to deal with a professional agent and you need to have that conversation, which they should initiate, like Mark said, up front. Find out what the agreement's going to be, what the commission structure is going to be before you go out shopping for a home, so that you are aware of what exactly you're going to need to close the deal as far as cash goes. Okay, but don't be discouraged from buying. Just make sure you deal with a professional agent and you get that information up front. That's what I surmise from this conversation.
Boom. Dude, that was perfect.
Stay tuned for the next episode because we're going to show you a first-time buyer how to buy a home. There's many different programs out there for first-time buyers. Okay, there's a new program that just came out where you need 1% down to buy a home, 1%, and you get 2% for free. So you're getting 2% for free. You only need 1% down to buy a home. There's also other programs out there that grant you the whole down payment. We're going to show you the plus and minuses of those. We're going to show you who's sitting at home right now watching us How to buy a home with little to no money. Boom.
Boom. That's it.
That's it.
It's a wrap.
See you next time.
Till next time.